Hello there and welcome to our Vegas Nation Stadium show where we provide all analysis and facts that are happening with the NFL Stadium set to open 2020. I'm Ed Graney, sports columnist for the Review-Journal. Today I'm joined by two special guests, Rick Velotta from the Review-Journal, our man on all things stadium, and Tina Quigley, general manager of the RTC of Southern Nevada. How are you?
I am well, and I appreciate getting to chat with you.
Yes, it's good to have you here. What do you think of the studio?
I love the studio, and I got to tell
Nice.
you, it is, and I love that you guys are doing this show. I think that there's a lot of curiosity amongst our constituents, our resident base, as to what this is, how is it progressing, and some of it's exciting and some of it's scary. So I appreciate that you are talking about it all.
I'll have some nice and scary questions for you.
Okay,
All right.
I'll take them both.
Good. Rick, it's been a while since you and I talked on the stadium. I know on Thursday you'll be at the Stadium Authority Board meeting, huge meeting. It's been delayed for a few reasons, the shooting and other reasons, but a big meeting Thursday. We'll get to some of the serious issues there. Let's talk first, though, on Monday, groundbreaking. There's a ceremony planned at the site. Usually these things are very media driven in terms of hard hats and shovels in the ground for the politicians. And that's fine and everything, and then everyone takes their photo ops, gets their interviews, and goes home, and then really the real work begins. Do you expect that to be this way Monday, or do the Raiders have any tricks up their sleeves? Do you think any crazy things they'll bring in players? It's a bye week. I mean, what do you see Monday with the groundbreaking?
Yeah, I think the fact that it is a bye week for the team bodes well in terms of getting people there who have some substance to them, And I think all along they've been trying to get that November 13th date pinned down so they could make sure that they have some people that from local people there that had a lot to do with the stadium being built. But I'm not sure whether or not there's a big media component to this, because I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any kind of an invitation to this event.
Tina, let's start with you on this. I know you toured Mercedes-Benz, the new stadium in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You might, in the future, go to Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. The people who built Minneapolis, the stadium for the Vikings, are the people building this one in Las Vegas. That's interesting. But you know as well as I do, and this is the scary part for fans, is the parking. Mm-hmm. Ironically, in Minneapolis, no on-site parking. We've had stories that Rick and others have written about the number of slots that they might have parking on stadium here. What did you see in Atlanta, first of all, that maybe you can bring with your experience to this stadium project? And then if you can get into kind of the parking issues in both places and what you foresee might be issues here.
Sure. I would say, so we had a panel of speakers. So we spent one day with a panel of speakers that included the mayor, included the construction management team for the stadium, that included the security team, that included the emergency response team.
This is in Atlanta.
This is in Atlanta. Also their traffic management team and their transit team, which is why I was so interested in attending this. One of the worst things you probably could do is actually have all of your parking right on site. You don't, from a traffic management perspective, want to have that because we have a very intense access points and then very intense egress, or when people are leaving the stadium, even more intense when people are leaving the stadium. The best thing that they tell us to do is make sure there are several access points to that stadium, and that, to the extent you can, diffuse and disperse by having parking in different areas. And where you do have parking, consider ways of entertaining people while they're at that parking, so that way they're maybe not getting in their cars right away as they leave. The tailgating culture, very big deal.
That's a big deal.
Very big deal. And I'm a novice to this. This is the first time that and so I appreciated getting to go there and really see firsthand this culture of tailgating. That was actually one of the other things. Their message to us is you don't really know the behavior of the people who attend a game will be different than the patterns of behavior than the people who are there to attend an event. One of their primary messages to us was, yes, you need to plan, but it's going to continue to evolve once you open. When we went, it was only their second game, and so the lessons learned were very fresh on their mind. And they actually had been making some changes even after just those one or two games. In particular, they really recommended taking care of the pedestrian access, if you cannot clear the pedestrians quickly, you cannot clear traffic quickly. So lots of great lessons learned like that.
Yeah, the tailgating's huge. I just got back from a trip from Buffalo and did a huge article on it. You think they'll be okay on the tailgating, and also do you have overall concerns about getting in and out of there on a Sunday, or do you think it's going to be over time for the Raiders games that you're going to have to learn more until this actually happens?
So one of our challenges is going to be that traditionally most stadiums, they have regular recurring attendees.
Right.
They're attendees that you can train them on how to use the stadium, how to use your traffic management, where to park, and they're the same. You're going to see them routinely. I think it's going to be tougher for us to train our attendees because we'll have a lot of visitors coming in. Our locals will be able to train on how to best use parking and when best to travel and how best to get there. It's going to be tougher to train the out-of-state attendees.
Rick, let me get back to you. And I know on Thursday, I don't know if it's specifically on the agenda, but Jeremy Aguero, I think, told you that he is at least going to bring this up, and that's this tax reform legislation recently approved by the House of Representatives that could jeopardize the financing plans for the stadium project. So explain to novices and others out there who might not know everything about the tax reform and what this means and how it could potentially be, bad might be a wrong word, but it could be damaging, like I said, to the financing, and how serious is this issue?
Well, first of all, it hasn't been approved yet. It's in a proposal stage at this point. It's a piece of legislation that is before the House.
Okay.
And this has been something that was going to be expected to be dropped at this point in time anyway, because the president is trying to reform the entire tax legislation. Okay, so everybody was waiting for this document to show up. It finally shows up, and guess what? There was a surprise in there, in that what they wanted to do was take out the tax-exempt status for bonds. Now, to the novice, that may not sound like such a big deal, but it is a big deal for the stadium, because a lot of the bonds that they are going to be selling in order to finance the construction of the stadium are tax-exempt. Now, in fairness, Washington has had a real tough track record of passing things through through legislation. It also has to go through the Senate before it does that. So there are a lot of things that could happen between now and final passage of that legislation. You can bet that the Nevada delegation is going to be doing everything they can to strike that language out of there on the tax-exempt status of bonds, because if that goes away, then we won't have any, the financing of the stadium won't have any problems. But if it stays as is, this could be a problem down the road in terms of building this thing, because the cost is going to go up, the interest rates will change, and the Jeremy Aguero of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority staff basically said, we have to run all these models all over again to see what the actual financial impact is going to be if this were to stay in place.
When Rick and I were up at the legislature to see the passage of the tax, great times up there. Rick and I we'll never forget that.
There are always great times.
Yeah, we'll never forget that. It's amazingly time. We were just excited the whole time. But a big word up there was infrastructure, and what kind of infrastructure requirements would be needed around that stadium, what still needed to be built, what needed to happen, the monorail, all of that. So can you take us through, in your mind, perhaps a few major infrastructure needs that still on the docket, still need to be changed in and around that stadium to get it ready for the kind of traffic, the kind of movement that will be there on a weekly basis?
Sure. Well, I will say that one of the other things that we heard in Atlanta repeatedly from our speakers was, you need to start meeting as a community regularly and quickly, because 3 years is going to go by very quick. Is going to go by faster than you think.
What changes could come? What potentially, if you looked out there 4 years down the road? So
monorail would be considered a form of transit, and I certainly hope that we see the extension of that, because the more modes that we can offer in accessing the stadium, the better. Each mode is a piece of the puzzle, whether it's transit or cars or Uber and Lyft or rail or some type of new technology as it evolves. Each piece is going to be part of it, pedestrian activity. We will look to coordinate with the Raiders on in any event on a game day transit schedule. We have partnered with the Golden Knights recently.
Yes,
we offer 4 park and ride facilities where we have express bus systems that take you in.
That's why they're winning.
That's why they're winning. Wow.
Did you get the fans as quickly as possible to root for them? Yes.
We are excited. So we've had some success with that, and inevitably, I would imagine we'll have similar conversations with the Raiders.
Groundbreaking's a step forward, but the thing that seems, I'm not going to say it's gotten lost, but we haven't heard as much, and I'm sure the Stadium Authority will take this up on Thursday, is the UNLV Joint Use Agreement. And as this was going forward in terms of passing the SB1 and all of that, UNLV, President Jessup, they played a major role. They were at all these meetings, Tony Sanchez, then AD Tina Quigley. They had a lot of people behind this. They want this to be their home on Saturdays, the field markings, I get all of that. You understand that. Why do you think there's been kind of not as much talked about in the joint use agreement? Where do you think this is? And do you think sometimes when nothing's being talked about, people think there's major issues behind it. Are there major issues in your mind, or do you think they're going to get this thing done?
It's hard to say because UNLV is not talking about it. The Raiders are not
That's
talking about it. But I think that one of the things about this is that the pressure has been removed by pushing everything back until February.
Okay.
One of the things that they were trying to do was get everything done by October. The October meeting was canceled, so then there was this rush to, well, maybe we need to get everything done by the November meeting. But then instead, what they did was just extend the entire deadline for having a final development agreement back into February. They actually pushed it back until April, but their target date is getting it done by early February.
Okay.
Obviously the university wants to have the stadium as their home, but because there are so many issues a part of this that haven't been determined yet, it just takes a little bit of extra time, and I fully expect that we won't hear anything about this until January.
Few other things that I think Thursday's meeting will include: the proposed community benefits plan, enabling work agreement between the authority and the Raiders subsidiary charged with building the stadium. Both of you, I guess, can talk to this community benefits plan, because another thing that was very well reported by yourself and others throughout this process is the people of Las Vegas are going to benefit from this, starting with the workers, starting with people, whether it's your infrastructure or working at the stadium. So those two aspects on Thursday, how do you think this comes out?
Well, I think that the Raiders have a pretty definitive plan that they want to present. I don't think a lot of the community people who have been pleading with the Raiders for some additional benefits are going to be particularly happy, because they're not going to get what they want. They wanted a seat at the table, they didn't get it. So there's likely to be some disappointment that comes out of this from some of the community members of West Las Vegas, historic West Las Vegas, and the North Las Vegas area. But the fact is that the Stadium Authority doesn't necessarily have to put their endorsement on it. They just need to make sure that it's done. It's going to be a benefit, but I think a lot of people are going to be wishing that there was more to it than just what they're getting.
In terms of the RTC's point in that and getting people to work, that has to be an important element, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of our core missions. Is so not only do we do transit and transportation roadway planning, but RTC is also the administrator of what we call Southern Nevada Strong, which is a regional plan. And one of the primary goals of the Southern Nevada Strong is to increase high quality jobs. And so yes, absolutely, we see this as something that is going to be a shot in the arm as it relates to that particular task.
This was initially sold as a job-producing
bill.
That was one of the three primary goals.
I remember that from our meetings up with the legislature as well. That and infrastructure.
Obviously, high-paying jobs and construction is going to be fantastic. I think, I don't know about you, Tina, but I'm a little bit concerned with all the things that are going on in our world, with all the construction projects going on in Las Vegas, all the things that are going on. There's an awful lot of houses that have to be built in Sonoma County, California. A lot of
rebuilding that has to go on down.
Where's the labor going to come from? It's one of those things where it's God bless them, those folks at the union say, yeah, we'll be able to build this, we'll be able to do this, but the fact is there may be a lot of resources that are going to other places for other different contracting jobs.
Well, speaking of Commissioner Sisolak, finally, he has publicly stated a completion date of July 31, I believe, or 31 or 21. It's July 2020 for the project. To me, that really means there can't be many delays at all. We saw what happened in LA. We've talked about that. And LA, by the way, has good weather too, because everything you hear about Vegas is, well, it's great weather. It'll be fine. LA has good weather. They're being pushed back a year, when the rain came through. I'd like to ask each of you in closing, when you hear that date of 2020, are you confident? What are some of the things you think could stall this? Do you think once the real shovels, not the ones we see on Monday, really get into that ground, that it will go through? And let me start with you. I mean, when you hear that date, that's pretty, it's got to go well.
It does. And so I'll go back to Atlanta's advice to us again, and that is that you as government agencies, those of you who have a responsibility for the infrastructure part, you need to start meeting now.
Right.
And so again, my boss will be calling some meetings with all of the group and taking the leadership role there, because like they said repeatedly, 3 years is going to go by fast, and there'll be a lot of gaps. There'll be things that you missed and that you're going to have to step up and rectify. Inevitably, whenever you have large projects like this where there are so many different agencies with some responsibility that need to collaborate and coordinate, there's going to be some gaps. So get started now so you can identify those more quickly.
What do you think? 2020 in July, and they open the season in 2020. I mean, it doesn't appear that there can be many very long delays at all if they're going to hit that mark.
There are always potential pitfalls that you can't expect, but the fact that they are working so diligently to get started quickly. I mean, you know, we talked about the groundbreaking ceremonial. It's going to be Monday, but the fact is that one of the things that will be happening at the Thursday meeting is that they're going to be putting together a contract with the Raiders that basically says these are some of the things that you can do on the site before we have the final development agreement in place in February. So they'll actually be working on the site. Probably they're already working on the site right now. There's a lot of things they can do: foundations, they can do clearing of the ground, they can do setting up of temporary utilities, setting up an office, all kinds of things that they can do before they actually formally agree to a final purchase price of this building. So the fact that they are conscious of that and that they are moving forward so quickly right now gives me a little bit of optimism that they'll be able to do this. And all along, the contractor for the project has said, "Gosh, we did, you know, the stadium in Minneapolis in 31 months. We can do that here,"
right.
And that's certainly something that we'll have to. You know, they'll have to be pretty much running a parallel schedule as they did in Minneapolis in order to make that happen.
I talked to that gentleman in Arizona for the preseason game of the Raiders, and who built the Minneapolis stadium. He was very sure of himself in terms of, I got it done there in time, we'll get it done here. But you can't, like you've said many times in the interview, you just can't predict it has to almost be done before it's done. You don't know, and you know things are going to come up, right? Things are coming up. Nothing's going perfect on this.
Things come up in small projects.
That become big ones.
Yeah.
I was here one March when it rained every single day. So, I mean, that's going to be a problem if that happens again.
That will be an issue. Let's hope we're there Monday and it doesn't rain. I think a better chance of raining than maybe us being there. Now we'll be there. Rick, Tina, thank you so much. This was really informative. Hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did.
Come back. We don't get many guests who want to come with us. This is great, right, Rick? It's usually just you and I. And
I love the conversation.
So we really appreciate it. I have a feeling Thursday's meeting is going to tell us a lot.
It'll be exciting.
Be exciting meeting. So there you have it. Rick, Tina Quigley, awesome stuff. We hope you enjoyed the show. All the ins and outs and facts up to date on the stadium. For all our coverage, stay at reviewjournal.com or here at Vegas Nation. We'll bring you all the up-to-date news. There's no one better than Rick Velotta in this state covering this story. Tina, again, thank you very much. I'm Ed Graney. Thanks for watching today.